Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Critical Podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Good, and joining me this week is an incredibly special guest, my friend, Jalen, aka Galactic Grizzly. Jalen, how you doing?
I am good, Jimmy. Thanks for having me on the show. Hope things have been, well, actually, I know things have been great on your end because we were just talking 2 seconds ago.
Yeah.
But this is my second time on the show. This time, audio is a lot better. I'm not in the middle of a daycare. This time I am at home, so audio is good.
I thought you were at some sort of cafe. You were at a daycare? That's amazing. It was that quiet.
No,
Like,
it was the cafe. It just sounded like a daycare with pretty much everything on earth going on in
Gotcha.
one space. So
you're like, why are they turning on that espresso machine again? You bring up a good point, though. I would love to start doing this where, like, I have a guest on and I immediately launch into the podcast and they, like, we have no preamble beforehand. I'm like, how are you doing? And they're like, I'm good. Are we recording? We're like, yeah, we are. Like, they're just like, kind of like, why did you do this? Like, I wasn't ready. But I love that.
Cool.
Because they have to do that, like, yeah, you have to do that kind of like, oh yeah, how are you doing type of thing. And it's like, you and I've already spoken. But for the listeners now, they both know that we're doing good. And I'm just like, we've worked together in the past for people who don't know. We did a video about Epcot, which I'm very proud of. And Jalen also over on Galactic Grizzly, that's the YouTube channel that he runs. He does a bunch of different interesting videos kind of talking. I think your best known series amongst all the other stuff you have on there is kind of like the where are they now, or what happened to, I should say. And you talk about, like, somebody from the Disney Channel from a long time ago and like what they've been doing for the past 15 or 10 years. Like, and you're like, oh yeah, I haven't thought about that person for a long time. And it's really fascinating. So that stuff must take a while to research, I would imagine.
Yeah, it does. That is without a doubt the most time-consuming part of those videos, which is why I haven't uploaded in a little while. Like, it's just I'm trying to make them better and better, and again, like, most of it is on the research side. So I'm doing one right now, which is I'm still in the research stage of the actual video, but yeah, like I do just. I guess you could say like has-beens, people that you just haven't thought of in a long time, whether they're just some kind of a celebrity. It doesn't just have to be actor, but they could be a musician. We did Epcot, which is the first time we did a place. But yeah, just stuff that you haven't thought of in a while, and bring it up to see where they were then, kind of where they went, I guess you would say south, or sometimes not south. It's just kind of out of the public eye, and then what they're doing now. So yeah, right now I'm doing an artist. I won't say who, but hopefully I can finish it sometime soon.
Yeah, well, I know what I like about it too is you did one, I think it was like on Lord or something, and you said something really cool. And this, I feel like it pertains more so to like musicians, but people, like, if you don't make music for a little while, people are like, what happened? Are they like gone forever, whatever? And you're like, actually no, she's doing just fine, and like she's coming back. And if you do well enough, especially with like music, I feel like there's a little more of like a grace period, or where you can kind of like, you can go away and then you can come back with like a new album and then you can tour. Whereas like with actors or like TV stars and things like that, it's like that, what's your next thing? What's your next thing? What's your next thing? But with musicians, sometimes it's like, yeah, I'm taking a little bit of a break and I'll be back when I want to. And I've won tons of awards and I'll see you next time. And it's just like, oh, it's kind of cool. So yeah, it's really fascinating. And it's on people that I've either like remember kind of, or people I've never heard of before. And then I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. So I recommend you go check it out. I probably have it linked up here and linked down there. And if you're listening to this, remember, it's Galactic Grizzly on YouTube. Just tell them that Jimmy sent you. So that way you can go listen to some cool stuff. And you have a lot of videos on there, wouldn't you say? How long have you been doing it?
The channel or the series?
Both.
The channel, 5 or 6 years.
I hear you, man.
Yeah, we were both veterans on this old platform. The series, maybe like, I want to say a little over a year. I had done like, I tested the idea out with just 2 videos. I did Frankie Muniz and Keira Knightley, and I did that a few years ago. And I just kind of like set it and forget it. And then like maybe a year or 2 later, I was like, oh, he's actually got some traction at the time. I should follow up with this. And so I did it again, like 2019, Yeah, like summer 2019, I started it back up. So
Yeah.
about a little over a year now.
That's so cool. It's funny they bring up Keira Knightley because I think of her in like the last Pirates movie. Spoiler alert: she's in it, does not say one word, and I'm just so curious how much she got paid for it. Or if they were just like, "Do you want to do it for like a favor? Like come back for one day and like hug somebody and then be done," like kind of thing. Or they kind of shoot like 2 scenes with her. I was like, this is like good for her because I just imagined her agents like, "Yeah, Pirates, they want you back." And she's like, "For how much?" And they're like, to like run up a hill and sleep in a bed. It's like all right. Yeah, I just, oh man, it's so good. So anyway, check that stuff out. But we're not here to talk about Keira Knightley today. We'll save that for another time. Oh my gosh, Pirates of the Caribbean podcast. That sounds great. Anyway, we're here to talk today about a little film that came out a year ago. I think I've even done like a little bit of a show or talked about it in the past, but we're going to go a little more in depth today on the film Joker. Now, if you haven't seen it, this is full spoiler territory, so just keep that in mind. We're going to talk about pretty much all of it and kind of dive deep into it. So if you're like, I haven't seen it yet, you should give it a shot. I would say it's a pretty good film, but I would also say that it is not a typical comic book movie. It's also not for all ages. I would say don't bring your kids. This isn't like a nice like, oh, Batman will come and save the day. It's not not that. Even though I am wearing a Batman shirt. But yeah, so just keep that in mind. This is a R-rated film. It's not, you know what I would say? Like it has moments where it is, you know, it earns that. But at the same time, it's not as like a hard R comparatively to some of the other stuff as far as like superhero stuff goes, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, the R moments are very R.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe 90%, 80% of the rest of the movie is not, you know, it's just a not an R-rated movie in that sense, but the harsh moments are really, really harsh.
Yeah. Oh, totally. So yeah, and just brace yourself for that. But again, it is an unsettling film. It's not one of those like kick back, relax, and you're like, it's not like an MCU film where you're just like, Ant-Man, that was fun. It's like you're like, oh my gosh, society. Like,
yes.
But anyway, this film, I don't know exactly when it's set. I think it's like 1980s, like early 1980s or something like that.
Yeah,
it seems like that, and it's set in the fictional city of Gotham, which is basically New York City, more or less, back then. And this is a very, it's very focused view on this one individual, Arthur Fleck, played by the one Joaquin Phoenix, as he kind of goes throughout his days as a clown for hire, kind of doing odd jobs here and there and battling mental illness, taking care of his mom, and kind of dealing with the unfortunate stuff in the world, as it were. And I was trying to remember how this movie opened up because I've been trying to read more screenplays because I'm trying to learn about acting and, you know, screenplay writing. And it actually opens up different in the screenplay, I believe, than how it does in the film. But either way, I think it's really gripping. I don't know how you feel about the first few moments because it's just like, oh, this is the movie it's going to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was really, that's a good way of putting it. Like the opening scene definitely shows like what the rest of the movie is more or less going to portray of, you know, him getting his sign stolen from him by a group of kids and then chasing him down in his clown suit and then just getting beaten for it. But yeah, that was just like right off the bat just makes you just feel for the guy. Like, damn, like dude already has a pretty not great job, and then has to deal with this on top of that. And it's like, okay, I can kind of see like where this is going in this direction.
Oh, for sure. And I think you bring up a really good point there because throughout this, he does some pretty horrible stuff, which we'll get to. But he starts off and kind of continuously you feel for him, which I think is the hardest thing to do for. I guess he's kind of a villain, even though he's the protagonist of the film. It's kind of like the Thanos style in Infinity War, where you're like, he's doing horrible things and that's not good, but I understand why he's doing horrible things. And like this is like showing why he gets to the point he does. It's not like he just one day snaps and he's like, the world's horrible and I'm just going to start killing people. It's like you see the world just kind of keep beating him down, and there are like brief moments, like glimpses where you're like, oh, it could be better, but then it's not. Like, oh, poor guy, like he's just trying to catch any break he can get. But yeah, the beginning with the sign being broken, and then it's like the big just yellow letters Joker, and it's just like, oh gosh, like this movie's not going to be, it's not going to be pleasant. And then kind of having to like go home, and that's where I feel like that's where the movie really settles into the atmosphere of the world, because you start to see him kind of walking home to his apartment through Gotham. There's garbage everywhere, and it's just kind of showing him on the sidewalks, and you can just like hear all these different kind of like fights happening. It really sets the tone, and all the like the older cars and stuff. It feels very like it's in the period, which I love a period piece, and I think they nail that portion of it really well. I don't know, what do you think about that? Do you feel like it kind of it harkens back to a time and nails that kind of aesthetic?
Yeah, for sure. Like after that first few minutes, I was like, there was no doubt that it was took place in early '80s, late '70s, and I from every aspect they nailed that. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said like him coming home in that first scene, like how that makes you like settled into his role and like makes you really understand him. There's something like I don't know, maybe it's just a subliminal thing of watching him physically go home. Like it, I don't know, makes you understand the character more when you
Mm-hmm.
can see what their home setting is and like what they have to do to get there, what it looks like, what the inside looks like, their neighbors, like all of that. Really, in the way they portray it, really just like you can level with him immediately. So it's like within the first 5 minutes, you're like, okay, I've got a pretty I'm here with you, Arthur. Like I got you. Like I
Yeah,
see
oh,
what
for
you're going
sure.
through.
Yeah, totally. Like it's funny because like talking about this, I remember like sitting Jalen like in the movie theater when that portion was happening, where they're kind of doing that shot of him walking on the sidewalk, and I was like, "Whoa, here we are!" I'm finally watching this thing. But right before that, they show this shot, and they keep coming back to this shot, but it's of these stairs. These stairs, these super long, unfortunate kind of part of his going home. I don't know if he has to climb it apparently, and there's this kind of visual style or sort of visual interpretation of his mood, it seems like, in the film when he has to go do things with stairs. And we'll probably kind of jump back to it, but in this first shot we see of these things, it's dark, it's brooding. You look at, there's like just, it's like stone stairs outside, just kind of almost straight up, and it's just like flights and flights and flights and flights of stairs. It almost seems endless. And you're like, he gets there and he's kind of walking, and you can tell he's done this a bunch of times, and he's just like, just gotta climb the stair. And you're just like, oh my god. Like it's like everything is so oppressive in that moment, and then kind of getting home and then dealing with his mom, which I think one of the more interesting kind of story beats in this film is her and her relationship, or lack thereof, of with another major player in Gotham. But like Arthur's relationship with her, and like he's really taking care of her. She's not, she's physically not well, that we know of so far, and he kind of just like holds her hand. They watch TV together, and that's kind of his life. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. What do you think of his mom? His mom's such a like a weird, interesting character, I think.
Yeah, his mom. I don't know. I don't think she ever says her age. But I mean, regardless, she's obviously older,
Yeah.
and yeah, she plays a very just strange role. I think the whole movie we don't see her outside of the house, besides like when she's hospital ridden. But
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure the entire movie you only know her inside of those four walls. So that kind of just summed it all up. Like the fact that he comes home to his mom, that's like where his mom remains,
Yep.
and that's as far as that goes. Like she's just really somebody that he has to go back to tend to. Like I feel like if she wasn't in the picture, I don't know, like maybe he would be a completely different character and this wouldn't even have much of a storyline. But um yeah, it's like his mom is almost like the human symbol of that home setting of like the real dumpster apartment and like this real like projects apartment complex. Like nobody wants to be living there, and it's like the only reason he has to be there is because he has to go back to take care of his mom. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's such a cool way to introduce her character, because they're sitting there, and like this as a Franklin Murray, Robert De Niro's character. He's a TV show, like an old school kind of talk show, and they watch it. It sounds like every night. It seems like he has this kind of this fantasy sequence, which I'm sure many of us have had about certain kind of like, oh, if you could be on that talk show, or if you could be in that movie, or whatever else. But he kind of explains in that fantasy sequence to Murray, because he kind of stands out from the crowd, and they put the light on him and stuff, and he's like, I live with my mom, and Murray defends him because that's what he would want Murray to do, and he's like, yeah, I live with my mom till I made my big break, and he's like, I take care of my mother and stuff like that, and it gives you the information you need, like he's saying it, but also he does it in a way that, like, if he were put in that position in his dream scenario, he would do that, and then he would get people to kind of rally around him. And obviously Murray being this father figure for him, and kind of really influencing what he wants to do, kind of being an entertainer, and then also kind of his little dance moves and stuff, and taking it to the next level with kind of warping it as well, because that's Murray does a little dance when he comes out. I just think that's so interesting. And then they kind of cut back to him just sitting in the apartment with his mom, and he's just kind of like, and I forget if it's right after this. Jalen, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it right after this, or was it before this, where he's talking with his social worker? I think it was before this. I could be wrong.
I really don't remember. I think it's before.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. Those talks kind of, like, the timeline of those always get me off, because they just jump in and out. So I'm not completely sure, but yeah, the scenes with him talking to the social worker, it was like, it took me watching it a second time to kind of realize, like, I guess she's not actually like a therapist or a counselor. She's just a social worker. Yeah. Which is like, it's just weird to think of it now. I don't know if that still happens now. I mean, maybe it just depends on the area that you live in, but I don't know. I find it kind of hard to believe that now, like, somebody with as much of a mental problem as he has, just pouring everything out to his social worker, and his social worker like having to work his file as if she is his therapist, and she's like clearly not in the position to be doing that. And it's just like, damn, like, if it just makes you level with him even more. Like, that's his only option, is that he doesn't have a therapist or a counselor. Like, that's it. Like, that's the closest thing he has, is just a social worker for him to talk to. And she does try to help him. Like, they go through his journal, but clearly she's just like, does not quite understand, and it really is not too much of a help for him.
Yeah, and it's interesting because going through some of the screenplay for this portion, they wrote her as really impatient, where she, like, and they say in there she's heard this 1,000 times before. She always looks at the clock because she has to go to her next meeting. This more seems like she is just kind of done, and she's like, like, I'm kind of half listening to you all the time, and yep, oh, this looks pretty scary. Like, it's a little different than being like, Arthur, I'm sorry, I wish I could help, but I gotta go. She just seems like way more just like kind of checked out, which we do circle back to her later on, and we'll get to that because that's a big turning point in the film. But I think that's such an interesting kind of situation, and that's the first time we hear him really do the laugh, which it sounds like he's trying to stifle a sneeze, and it's kind of painful, like he does it, and he has this kind of it's almost like a nervous tick that he has. And I thought that was such a cool and interesting way to inject that kind of aspect of the character into the film, with it being a little more natural than him just kind of thinking everything's funny all the time. I don't know. How do you feel about the laugh and the laughter?
The laugh, as soon as I heard it, it made sense to me. It definitely is like a nervous tick type thing. But yeah, it's so clear that he doesn't want to be laughing. It's so clear that it's almost hurting him to be laughing. It's almost like a smoker's cough, like, except it's just turned into a laugh. Like, you just clearly that's what it was. Like, immediately when I heard that laugh, I was like, damn, that would suck to have a nervous tick. Like, I'll take clicking a pen or tapping my finger over breaking out into uncontrollable laughter.
Yeah, and even when he's like trying to, like, even entertain a child, and like a lady's angry at him, he has to kind of give the card to people and be like, yeah, I'm sorry, I have a medical condition, please return this card, I apologize for this. And that lady's just like, just stay away from my kid. It's like he's trying to do anything to get anybody to smile or laugh, and it's not. And he's like, he tries to like cover up the laugh and like shake his head. Like, people are like, you think that's funny? And he's just like, no, but he just keeps laughing. And it's almost like he's vomiting, he's just like, I can't control it at all. And it's so different though, because apparently I looked this up too. He's got like a few different types of laughs, because one of the next scenes we get is like he gets called in by his boss to talk about the sign, because the sign is gone, the sign's been broken, and the music shop owner was like, you stole it. But as he's walking and leaving his friends, he does this kind of laugh, and he's just like, ha ha ha, and then he just cuts it, and he's just kind of like, it's just gone. And that one is like I'm laughing because that was kind of funny, but I control this laugh, and I can go right back to kind of sinister Arthur. And it's like, I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about, but that, like, it freaks me out, because he's just like, ha ha ha, like, and then he's just kind of walking down the hallway, and you're like, oh gosh, like, you're like, oh, like,
that one is really funny, on top of, because it's been turned in. I've seen that in so many memes. Like right after the movie, that was used in a lot of memes, and it was just too funny. But yeah, like, to me, like, when he would do that, because he does it a couple of times, like, it made me actually laugh, because I just find that to be really funny.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I forgot to mention this too, when he's talking to the social worker. Apparently, he had like an incident beforehand where he ended up in the hospital that we never get full clarity on what happened. Do you remember, like, in the beginning, they're talking, she's like, do you, like, I think she says something about that, like, your last episode, and I was like, wait, what do you mean your last episode? Like, what? I want to know what happened. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause I don't remember.
Yeah, they kind of do another call to it at the very, very end, like right before they roll the credits, when he was talking to whoever that was, like the doctor or therapist.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, they don't actually clarify why or how that happened, but maybe that was just at the beginning, at least, maybe that was just to throw in, like, definitively, like, he does actually have a mental illness. But I don't know. They don't really explain it.
Yeah, and that ending could almost be that episode in a way, depending on how bad it got. Because I would imagine that if it was as bad as it kind of maybe insinuates, he wouldn't be like a free man afterwards. So probably not that, right? But I'm not sure. It was just something I thought would be interesting to bring up. But anyway, so he gets into this kind of weird situation where one of his other clown buddies gives him like a snub-nosed 38, which you just, you're going to hand out to people in a bag. And you're just like, yeah, protect yourself, buddy. Which I was like, really? That's
1979, baby.
Exactly.
Or no, whatever year.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's the one guy that, like, even the boss says at one time, he's like, I like you. You kind of freak the other guys out, but I like you. And, like, of course, this one guy just kind of gives it to him. It's fine. I guess he probably wouldn't have sought it out himself, but it's more interesting, I guess, to kind of, give him this kind of quote unquote power and then be like, all right, off in the world you go. But one of my scenes that I really think is, like, unintentionally really funny, but later on that does pop up, is that he starts bringing that gun around with him, and it provides like some little moments of like brevity where it's like he's sitting in his apartment and he's like telling a joke, and he's like, do you want to know who's not funny? You. And he like shoots the wall and he's like, oh my gosh, and like his mom's screaming, he's like, I'm watching an old war movie, and there's like a bullet hole in the wall, and I looked at it, and later on you could still see it there, but it's like she wouldn't notice, he's not going to tell her. You know what I mean? Like, a gunshot went off in that apartment, but that probably isn't completely, like, that's like par for the course, I feel like, with this apartment complex, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's not a safe place to be.
Yeah, that scene was too funny. Like, him shooting it was funny on its own, but his response afterwards, like, just cracks me up. And he was yelling, like, I'm watching an old war movie. Like, I just imagine somebody like, yeah, that's what you would say to like your parent, and like they wouldn't come out and check up on you, because like the fact that she just stays in the room and he just turns the TV up louder is just like the funniest. It fully explains even further like their relationship of she really just doesn't seem to care, but
oh, for sure, yeah. And then there's like, and it's like, okay, he's learned his lesson. He'll probably just keep it like in a safe or a cupboard or something, somewhere safe, I should say. And then it's like he's dancing around like a children's hospital, and they're all like presumably like like serious illnesses, and he's kind of dancing around, and it falls like out of his pants or something, or of his jacket, and like all the kids are like, and you can tell like the nurse in the back's like, oh my gosh, and he kind of picks it up really quick, and there's like a little kid who's laughing, and he's kind of laughing, he's like, shh, don't tell anyone, like that's gonna make it go away, just like nobody saw this, it's just a prop. Like how, like even back then it wouldn't make sense, but nowadays if you like, would you even say that was like your defense? You're like, it's part of my act, like, and nobody asks him like, what part of your act are you using a fake gun in it? But I love that. That's his defense, and he holds on to it for a lot. Like, he even tells the cops at one point, he's like, "It's part of my act." And you're like, really? Okay, it's pretty good. Yeah. What do you think of the hospital scene?
The hospital scene was just one that's just a face palm. Like, oh man, why did you bring that to this hospital? Like, yeah, it is. I didn't even think about that. The fact that from the moment he got the gun, he holds on to it for basically the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Which is just like, I mean, again, it just something that reiterates like he clearly has something seriously mentally wrong with him, because like nobody in their right mind, well, most people in their right mind would not think to go about the way that he went about doing that. So yeah, that was just facepalm.
Yeah. Which is funny because it leads into something that, like, I don't remember if I saw this, or if I remember seeing this in the theaters, but in the very beginning, Franklin Murray says something about, in the newspaper too, there's like giant rats in Gotham. And I really wanted them to say giant bats in Gotham. I know they're not going to do that, but like the Batman person, he was like, oh, this is a perfect time. But then he's in a toll booth talking to his boss, and his boss is basically firing him. But you see a giant rat run around the corner outside, and I was like, oh my god, there is a giant rat. It's like, I'm paying attention, movie. So there's a lot on the second viewing of this. I was like, oh, I can appreciate that. But that's where it really takes the turn. I don't know if this would technically be the inciting action for this film, because up until this point it's been like a little more slice of life of like this person who's kind of down on his luck and having some issues. But then the subway sequence. And then, as most people, talked about it, the most kind of, maybe the thing that's the hardest to believe, but there's these kind of three, upper crust Gothamites that come in, and they're probably, stock exchange or broker people or whatever else. And one of the guys starts kind of chastising this woman on the subway, and she looks down, and there's Arthur sitting in like his clown gear, and he's had a horrible day because he got fired and for carrying a gun into a children's hospital. Makes sense. And then you get this thing where they're like throwing fries at this lady, and the lady looks down at him as if he's gonna do something, and he's like, and then he starts doing his nervous laugh, and then one of the other guys, because this lady just kind of takes off, one of the other guys starts singing "Send in the Clowns," which good on him. Like it kind of broke that stereotype of like the jock or like the guy who's gonna beat up on somebody else. That part was like, I was not ready for it. I don't know how you felt about like the dude he was singing like all of "Send in the Clown." So I was like, this guy, he knows his musical theater. Maybe that's where they came from. Maybe they're theater people. What'd you think of it?
Yeah, I thought it was just really strange.
Yeah.
I also thought it was a very like really intentional way to try and like poke at somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna go to the extent of singing this theater ballad, like,
it's amazing.
Clearly, you're right. You're deliberately looking for trouble. Like, there's no confusing that. So, yeah, I mean, as soon as he started singing, from there I was like, oh, this is gonna end really, really badly.
Yeah.
Like before that, I knew it was like this is gonna go south. But at that point, I was like, okay, now this is going really south. So yeah, it was just kind of like a weird foreshadowing, I guess.
That it's so great that you say that, because all I can think of is like, it's the next level of like guys approach someone in an alley in a film. It's like, if guys approach anywhere and they're singing, something really bad's about to happen. Like he's slightly coordinated. His friends were like, oh yeah, like this is fun. I'm surprised they should have all jumped in on it. But I get where like, you're right, they want to poke fun at him. And that's a song that a lot of people know, and maybe during the time, maybe it's roughly, I don't know when that song came out, so maybe it was like around that time, and that was the kind of the purpose of it. But because like nowadays, I don't know if they would try to like poke fun at like they'd be like, oh, who's that Ronald McDonald? You know, like I don't know what you do to like because if you saw a clown on a subway today, you would not go singing and walking towards them.
No.
You'd be asking to die. Like, and these guys kind of were, and they didn't know. This is decades ago when clowns were still like it's kind of fun. But now it's like it's oh no, everybody's seen it, and those who haven't, like myself, still know. Run, like don't do it. But I really like that sequence because it's the first time, unfortunately, and I'm not condoning the violence, but like you see Arthur stand up for himself, but it's way too far in the other way. Because like if in the past he's just gonna take the beatings, now he's like, you know what, I'm gonna go past beatings and I'm gonna go right to murder. Which that first gunshot, I was like, oh my gosh! Like the first time I saw it, I was like stressed out. I was like, oh my gosh. What did you think about that sequence afterwards? Like, were you like, are you rooting for him? I don't know. Like, I don't know what to feel.
Yeah, it definitely puts you in a weird middle ground of like, this part of me, I'm like, yeah, Arthur, like, go ahead, like, fine. And then you're like, nah, well,
yeah,
maybe you should have hit him in the foot. Like, maybe not straight for the chest on the first shot, but I mean, yeah, it was just, I guess it just came down to like the fight or flight, and he was like, I'm done with the flight. I'm going straight to the fight for once. And I mean, he was carrying the snub nose for the last however many days. And I mean, yeah, that's just kind of, I figured like that's what he would go to, but when it actually like breaks out and you hear that first gunshot, it is like, dang, like, especially since it's inside of a train, you know, a metal tube, it's like everything is just amplified. And yeah, it was, the scene by itself was really well done, just like technically. But yeah, and then like the fact that he goes, like, kills the first two guys right there, and then the third guy like kind of gets away, and he goes to the extent of like chasing the guy down, and that's where it kind of goes to a different point of like rage of like clearly he just goes ballistic and is like, nobody, like, I'm taking all three of you out, like I don't care, I've had it with all three of you, I'm chasing you all down. So yeah, it was a rooting for, and then a quickly like, oh man, like that went sideways.
Yeah. Oh, and man, you're bringing up so many good points here. Because it, you know, I think it helps that we talked about that scene before where he's kind of bad with it, and like he's not the first time he's using this thing. He's like a crack shot with it. Like the first time he uses it, it's inadvertent, it's accidental, and he's like, oh my gosh, and like that pays into the believability of the situation. So that first guy it goes right through his head, and then that other guy gets like 2 in the chest, and that other guy he shoots in the back. So like I'm sitting here counting, and I think there's 6. You can put 6 bullets in this thing because I've turned into that guy ever since John Wick. I'm like counting bullets. I'm like 1, 2, 3. And he must have gotten more than that because I was like, did he only get 6? But no. Anyway, so in that moment when he takes these guys down, it's just a brilliant it's a microsecond Jalen, but like I don't know if it's Joaquin Phoenix or the direction or whatever else. He takes it and he has 1 bullet or like 2 bullets left potentially. And he shoots those 2 guys. He gets that other guy, and the guy starts running. He takes the gun and he puts it at his head for a second. Then he's like, "No." Like he thinks about it for a second of like,
he does.
Should I be done now, forever, or am I committed to this? And when he commits to it, I feel like you're with him there because you're like, all right, how would I do this? And like because you're like in his mind where you're like, all right, he's waiting for the guy to hop in and out, and then you're like, also, if I was the other guy, would I jump out like right away, or am I gonna like stay in there? And once he jumps out and like Arthur sees that, it's like it's over. And then he gets him, and then he like boom, like he shoots him like another time or 2 or something, and it's like, yep, I think you got him. Yeah. I wonder if they ever considered a version where he did that and he just kept clicking it until like sometimes it happens in movies where it's like a rage moment and they just keep there's no bullets to fire, just click 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 click.
Right.
But yeah, man, that whole sequence, and then it's kind of like he's fully in, you know, to this whole thing, and that kind of really kicks off this revolution in Gotham where they kind of like kill the rich. And I don't know how you feel about this because I feel like they add the Thomas Wayne stuff in to kind of have the connection with his mom, which makes sense. And I don't feel like it's fully shoehorned in there, but I also feel like they did want to kind of have a little Batman stuff in there, because not too long after that sequence, you do get the reveal that Thomas Wayne may be Arthur's father. And like for the whole movie, I was like, oh my gosh, like I could totally see this. Like Thomas Wayne's this big wig, he's this jerk, he doesn't want to deal with his family at all, and you know he's gonna go confront him because that's who Arthur is now. He's like, I got a problem with somebody. I'm gonna go to your house, and maybe terrorize your child or something, or whatever else. But that whole sequence with little Bruce Wayne is so creepy. Like it is just, but it's like it's still kind of innocent, but it's still weird. I don't know how do you feel about that? And obviously, too, you're a father, Jalen, so you probably are like, oh my god, dude, get away from my kid. Like,
it is like that first scene where it switches to Wayne Manor and you can see him from like afar approaching. That alone is just like it is really, and it's super strange because like we know him, like we spent the past, I don't know, 45 minutes following this guy around, and the fact that it still comes across as super predator, like it's just really, really strange. But seeing the interaction of like him through the gate trying to like do magic tricks with Bruce was kind of like, okay, I guess like the fact that Bruce didn't just immediately skirt and just run back to the house. The fact that he like entertained it, it was like, like, go on. I actually like what you're doing. And then, you know, whoever it's supposed to be, I don't know who the character that comes out is, if it's supposed to be Alfred or
like security guard guy or something.
But just very strange. But yeah, because of that, like after murdering the 3 people, it's almost like he's reborn as a completely new person and decides, I'm just going to go to Wayne Manor and settle this myself. But thinking that he alone is just going to walk into Wayne Manor and like just hash us all out. And then it's like, you're not even going to get to the front gate. Like, that just kind of, I feel like it shoved him back into his like that low reality, and then it kind of like makes him even angrier. And it's like, no, I'm not going back to that life. Like that's not me anymore, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do by literally any means necessary to solve what's in front of me.
Oh, definitely. And like the fact that he's got like his fingers in Bruce's mouth making him smile, you're like, oh my gosh. Like even like pre-pandemic, that's messed up. And now I'm like, Bruce, what are you doing? Obviously it's not, you know, that wasn't a consideration. I also like they have a little moment too where Bruce is kind of following him and he slides down like a fire pole, and I was like, is that like an old Batman callback or something, like a little fire pole? I was like, these are the things I think about on second viewings. And somewhere in here, I don't know if it's before this or after this. I think it's after this, because he kind of gets shooed away from that. But they cut the funding for the social worker. Yeah. And they're like, you're not going to get your meds anymore. You're not going to talk to anybody anymore. And she has this really honest moment with him and says like, hey, you know, like they don't care about you. They don't care about me. Like whatever. And that starts to really play into it too, because like some of those tendencies that he's had, he's like, you know, I would have felt bad about this thing, but I don't. I'm actually feeling really good. Like I don't feel bad about this stuff anymore. That kind of all plays, I think, even more into this whole thing while he's trying to kind of figure out like if he's going to get Thomas Wayne to help him. And he's an incredibly lucky guy in a lot of these like dangerous circumstances, but he's also pretty resourceful. Like he's breaking into this like movie theater night like that Thomas Wayne is at, and he like goes in like the one door while this fight's breaking out outside with all these people wearing Joker masks because like the revolution has started, and he's like wearing like a little like a, I don't know, like a bellhop uniform, just kind of walking in. And you're like no one's gonna know. I'm like, he's like, it's like Hitman. He's like playing the game Hitman. He's just walking right in, and confronting Thomas Wayne in the bathroom. Which, like, if people singing to you on a subway is bad enough, if you like turned around or you came out of a stall in a bathroom and someone was standing there and the whole place was empty, you'd be like, I'm about to be murdered. Like, it's like. No, probably not a good way to approach the person you may or may not think is your father. I don't know. Like, he's taking his shot. What did you think of the bathroom scene?
The bathroom scene, I mean, to be in Thomas Wayne's shoes, it would without a doubt be super weird, and you're gonna be defensive because why would anybody approach you like that? But watching it, I was rooting for him. I was like, you know, the approach is kind of weird, but whatever, like, do what you gotta do. Like, this is possibly your dad. So if you gotta come up to him right as he's zipping up his pants, then do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was strange, but I was still glad that he did it. But it was just kind of unfortunate that Thomas Wayne was such a douche to him and gave him such a like that whole exchange of that conversation was like I felt that like
Yeah.
the fact that when he like yells that like when Arthur yells back at him like what's wrong with people, like why can't anybody just be nice, like
Mm-hmm.
it's just so like I feel like that was written in there like specifically because that's transcends early 80s to today, like
Mm.
even if somebody may say something sideways to you, like people are just so fast to dismiss and just be rude, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
like why can't we just be nice?
Yeah. No, you're definitely right. And that is kind of like one of his. I would say it's like a mantra, but it's a thing that he keeps coming back to when he's kind of defending himself with people when people are just immediately mean, because everybody seems to be mean to him immediately. But the first time I saw this, he was like, he's like, I think I'm your son. He's like, look at us. I thought that line was in there to be like, he's definitely his son. But then, like when Thomas starts talking about this, it seems like the ghosts of his past that weren't really his problem in the first place have come back, and he's like, oh, I'm dealing with like the son of that lady who was crazy, and now I have to deal with you now, and I'm just like in no mood, dude. And he's just like not that you should punch him, but he's like, I'm done with this. Like, I'm kind of like, get out of my way, dude. I don't know who you are. And that kind of sets him off to go to seek out the information, which I thought this was maybe the big like twist of the film. But him going and using he's a likable guy. That's the trick with this guy. He's likable, even if he's kind of creepy. And he's talking to that clerk at Arkham, and he's like getting this information from him. And then when he finally kind of breaks because he can't get the information, he kind of grabs the thing and he starts banging his head on it. And the guy's like, but he gets the information, finds out that he's not actually Thomas Wayne's son. He was adopted. His mom was in an abusive relationship, and like one boyfriend or multiple boyfriends beat him, and he was malnourished and stuff. That's where I feel like if the subway scene wasn't like the scene that fully put him over, like already, this is like the only thing in his life that kind of made any sense is gone, because like at this point his mom has been hospitalized because she had like this seizure because she was talking to these cops, because the cops were inquiring about the shooting incident, and you can kind of piece it together how they got to him, because they're like, all right, let's look for clowns who might have a gun. Oh, some guy just got fired for having a gun and he's like a clown performer. That might be the guy. So great detective work there, Gotham PD. And then like, and there again, we're talking about the gun thing, and he's just like, it's part of my act. But finding that out with his mom, and then just kind of deciding to kill her. I'm just like, oh my gosh. I'm just like, all right. And then like I start counting the bodies. I'm like, all right, he's up to 4. Like, it's like starts doing that. Did you feel bad for her? Like, I feel kind of bad for her, but at the same time, I don't know if she could help that she didn't she couldn't separate the fact that she wasn't really, she didn't have an affair with Thomas, and like that, Arthur wasn't his son. Like, I don't know. How do you feel about her now after like that kind of twist, as it were?
I did feel bad for her there because it's just like, I mean, getting killed unexpectedly, I always kind of feel for the person. It's like, dang, like you couldn't have ever saw that coming. So yeah, I mean, in that instance, I did. But in a weird way, I guess, because I mean, right after that, he's like just a new person again. It's like, like just relief for him that he's like feeling good. Now I've got that out of my life. I'm feeling great now. Something throughout there, they hint at, or not hint, but he appears to have a girlfriend.
I was just gonna bring this up.
The movie.
So glad you did. I'm glad you did.
Which was his neighbor. That he like has that quick interaction with in the elevator.
Yeah.
But yeah, the movie leads you to believe that him and this girl are together. And then I don't remember when. I think it's right after he leaves Arkham when he finds that out and he goes back home. because he stops into her apartment, like just unexpectedly, like breaks in, I think, and she's like, she recognizes him as her neighbor, but not as clearly not as a boyfriend, and he like leaves right after that. And at first, I wasn't sure, like, did he hurt her? Like, did he do anything? But they didn't really say anything. But I don't think he did anything, because I feel like they would have made that more clear if he had done something. Um, but yeah, that whole thing was, I had bought into it. I thought that they actually worked together, and then like them replaying the scenes and showing that it was just him in all those scenes, and that she really wasn't there that entire time, was just like, damn, like the one person I thought you had rooting for you and like by your side wasn't there the entire time. Like it was just something that, part of his imagination.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was like, I kind of like left it out on purpose until this point, because that is like the one thing where you're like, well, it's nice. He's found like love, and that's pretty good. And there's one scene early on where he like goes in and he kind of finds her and he just starts kissing her. And I remember thinking, I was like, I don't know if I buy that. I was like, he just like, because they had maybe seen each other once or twice before. And I was like, we'll see. And then later on when that pops up, I'm like, oh, so this is all just in his mind. And I was talking to a friend about this when I first saw it. But when he leaves and goes back to his apartment, you're right. It's very ambiguous. We don't know exactly what happened, if anything happened at all. And I told him, my friend, I was like, I don't think anything happened, because if there would have been, like you said, Jalen, like that, we probably would have seen something, heard something, whatever else. And my friend was like, well, maybe that's just because you're an optimistic kind of guy, and that says more about you as a person, because you're like, oh, like probably nothing really happened, and maybe nothing did. But at the same time, like this movie doesn't seem like it's that kind of movie. But you're right though. I feel like if something were to have happened still after watching a second time, I think we would have had something. There would have been a police report, or we would have gotten some sort of closure on that, because it is so open-ended, especially at the end, the fact that she's like, you're Arthur, right? Like, I don't even like, you gotta get out of here. And it's just like, oh no. Like the one thing that was like, oh, this is kind of sweet, like it was in the trailers and stuff, you're like, Joker's got a girlfriend, and you're like, that's kind of sweet. And it's like, nope. Yeah. And just like, and then it hurts even more, because you look back at that first scene where she does that kind of like, she shoots herself in the head because her kids, fake with the finger guns, and like her kids driving her crazy, and they're walking in the hall, and he turns out, he's like, hey, and he does the same thing, but he takes it like to a new extreme where he like pretends to shoot himself, and he's just like, ugh, and he like kind of like almost flops over, and you're like, that might be the last time they talk to each other. And I believe that he stalked her. Like, I believe that segment of it. But then afterwards, where she's like, oh, I was hoping it was you following me, it does seem a little too like, oh, that's really? Like, it seems too good to be true. Like, she's like, oh, I hope you come in and rob the place. And that's when he's like suave Arthur. He's like, well, I've got a gun. I could come tomorrow. Like, and she likes that. Like, most people would be like, I need to go. Yeah, like a lot of like little character interactions like that. But now we have like full unhinged Arthur. His mom's dead. He's committed triple homicide, and he's kind of started this revolution, or kind of kicked off, and they just become the face of it, because people just were like riding almost anywhere, just on the cusp of it, and they kind of really, that spurs them. And then we get probably the most brutal sequence, and we circle back. I think his name is Randall, the guy who gave him the 38 in the first place. And Arthur even says amongst that group when he's leaving, he's like, you know what? He's like, it's actually Randall who gave me the gun. And he does the whole like, oh, I forgot to punch out, and he kind of punches that, like the punch thing a bunch, like the punch card thing, and knocks it down. But then he walks down some stairs, and there's like a don't forget to smile, and he crosses out the forget. But he starts going down the stairs, and that's part of like, I feel like that was very intentional. Like every time he's going down the stairs in a sequence, it's like a freeing thing where he's like, oh, life's easy. I just got fired from my job, but like whatever. Like, but Randall and that other guy show up from his work, and oh God, it's so brutal, because like he locks the door, because he's like, oh yeah, we heard your mom pass away, we're gonna bring you like a drink or something. And like Arthur kind of has a problem with this Randall guy, but the way he responds with it is, I don't know if it's half of his scissors or a full pair of scissors, but they're like talking, and they start talking, And then he's like, Arthur's like, yeah, yeah. And then he just stabs him in the neck and then stabs him in the eye and starts smashing his head into the wall. And that other guy who's there is like, Arthur, like, what are you doing? Oh my God. That sequence, I remember thinking like the movie's just so intense, but that moment for me, I was like, okay, we got to this moment. Like, like, how do you feel rewatching that? It's pretty like, yeah.
Yeah, rewatching that is, it still doesn't have the effect of as when I watched it the first time. Like that was just like, I like when you saw him lock the door, I was like, it was kind of like no, like
a predator.
Right.
He learned from the subway.
Right. I knew he didn't like the guy, but I was like, just kind of like confused. Like, you didn't like him that much, like to the point where you're gonna like lock him in to do harm to him, and then like just to go from 0 to 100 and just take him out like that was just, I mean, that's like one of the most brutal ways you could kill somebody. And then like him just sitting there afterwards, and he was just like in a state of just peace afterwards, and just calmly sitting there. And then I was like thinking, well, is he gonna kill the other dude too? Who I can't remember his name.
Yes, let me look it up quick.
He says it, but I don't remember what he says. But yeah, him just sitting there, I was like, oh, I think and it was just like a weird 50-50 thing of like, he could kill him, but at the same time, like that's another guy who has never done anything wrong to him, so I don't know why he would. And the fact that he doesn't just kind of reinforces that weird idea of like, he's clearly mentally off, but he does have his sense of like reasoning left. Like, he could have just went all out rage and ended up killing the other guy too, but he never did anything to the guy, and he mentions that like, you were the only person who was ever nice to me, and lets him leave. And which was the funny scene of him like running to get past him, and then Arthur like jumps at him. Like,
so the most stressful moment in the movie for me. I was like, yeah, okay. So I looked up. His name's Gary. So poor Gary. Yeah, he like kisses on the head and stuff, and like he can't unlock the door. And like, is it a common practice to lock your doors in this apartment? Maybe, but clearly the girlfriend didn't do that, or whatever else. Like, I don't know. It's hard to know. Maybe she was flustered with her kid. But that whole sequence, she's like, Arthur, I can't open the door, and he's like, of course you can't open the door. It's like, and this is after the conversation where he's like, hey, you know the Franklin Murray show? He's like, I'm gonna be on there tonight, and he's like covered in blood. He's got like the white paint on. Gary's just like in the corner, like he's like, that's good. Yeah. It's like, please don't murder me with a pair of scissors. Yeah, I feel so bad for Gary, but like that, it's just, you're so the audience kind of in that moment back to like another person. If you're not Arthur, you're Gary, and you're like, oh my God, Arthur, like this is like I saw you crawl into a fridge earlier. That's one thing. You're like, oh, that's kind of interesting, like Indiana Jones-esque. I get it, but now it's like you're murdering people with scissors. So that brings the grand total, or so far, up to five people that he has murdered personally. And
I did want to mention Gary. I feel like him and Gary has, I guess, something in common, because they were always the butt of the joke. At least it seemed that way amongst their coworkers. Because Gary, being a little person, like you hear every time he's at work, they're throwing a joke at Gary, and even right before what's his name dies, he's like busting Gary's chops.
Yeah,
but so I feel like it was like a relatable thing of like, hey, like me and you are the only people that like, we don't really wrong anybody, and I guess it's just like a weird leveling thing that he has with him. But at the same time, him like still joking with him, it's like so strange that he's in this complete state of bliss and like nothing's wrong, and I can still sit here and joke about, you know, the lock being too high for you to reach. It's just like, you know, Gary's like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like trying to put myself in his shoes, and I would have fully just peed myself at this point. And I mean, pretty much exactly what he did is probably exactly what I would have done. So it's just like, crazy.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
That whole scene is just crazy.
It's like Gary, no good deed goes unpunished, and he's like, you know what? This is kind of a horrible world, and my old, ex coworker, his mom died. I'm gonna come bring him a bottle of wine or something, and it's just like, nope, I didn't, or whatever he brought. I don't know, his whiskey, who knows? But then like that sequence takes place, and now he's just fully in it. Like that's who he is now. But he gets the full outfit on, and he looks great. Like I think the outfit looks so darn good. This is the thing that still bothers me, and I don't know why they did this. Jalen, maybe you can help me understand. The music they play is from it's from other things, but I know it from like Happy Gilmore. I think it's like like there must be a reason for that. Maybe he's celebrating in his mind, but like that was the time that I wanted the score to kick off more so, and it doesn't until he's way down the steps. Which is fine.
Yeah.
Which again, down the steps, descending. I'm trying to do a theme that they probably didn't. Maybe they knew about this. Who knows? But like when that music kicks in, like the actual score, it's so good. Like I love that because it's like this, like these creepy strings. Like it's maybe bass or cello or something. But it's so like ethereal, and you're like he's dancing to the music that only he can hear. I don't know. What do you think about that? Is the music choice like weird to you there, or do you think that was fitting for that first segment at least?
I found it to be really fitting, only because for the life of me, I've heard that song like a million times, but I don't actually know the name of it.
Yeah,
which is sad. But I usually hear it. It's like a pregame like fight song. Like it's always like a pregame, get the crowd hyped up. Which I thought it was fitting because he was like, showtime, like let's get this show on the road. This is my walking to the ring, coming down the tunnel, like, and I'm about to get it on. But the rest of the score is so fitting because it's just like every time you would hear those chords, it's just like sorrow. Like that's all I could think of, just like the sound. Like if you would think of what sorrow would sound like, that's what it would be, because it's just like this long dragging out, just like like that hurts.
Yeah,
like,
it's like it's oppressive.
The whole score. Yes, yeah, exactly. The whole score was like that, and then to hear that, like the fight song randomly, it's just like it throws you for a loop. But him like coming down the stairs and just in complete bliss and like smoking his cigarette and just having a blast coming down the stairs as he's about to just do whatever, go down this war path, is like, I thought it was pretty fitting.
Sure. Apparently this score was actually written or composed without knowing or seeing the film, which usually is not how it's done. I could be wrong on this, but apparently it was kind of done that way. And then that bathroom sequence, right after he shoots those three guys and he kind of runs into that bathroom to kind of get some kind of compose himself, as it were. He's supposed to kind of wash his face and just kind of be like, oh, okay. But what they did is they played the music over that, like they actually like had it for him to hear, Joaquin Phoenix, and he did the dance moves totally like kind of improvised to it, which I was like, so that whole sequence where he's in that kind of dingy, creepy bathroom where he's dancing around and stuff, that was like all, apparently that's what I was reading about. I was like, that's fascinating. But that, like, it's such a cool, weird score, and it fits it, I think, just so dang well. And then you get into what I just think is the coolest scene of the whole film, what it's been leading up to this whole time, fantasy meets reality, as it were, but finally getting to be on the Arthur Murray show, because we didn't really talk about this earlier, but he did do a little spot for stand-up comedy where he thought his girlfriend was watching and she was not. But he does some stand-up comedy, and he keeps telling people in his life that he's pursuing stand-up comedy. He's talking to a social worker. He tells it to his mom, and his mom says, well, you aren't funny. And like, there's this kind of, and he's just like, you know what? I'm gonna keep plugging away at this. Which is weird because like, she says he's not funny, but he keeps telling people that she said he was meant to bring laughter and, happiness to people. I don't know. Maybe he just made that up, but he finally gets to be on the Arthur Murray show, gets to meet his idol. He's fully decked out. And then he finally gets to go out there, and he's dancing, even though he has been for at least a week or so been made fun of on the show. They're like, hey, we got this, this video from this little stand-up nightclub, and this guy's just laughing at his own jokes and like, what a kook, kind of weird a guy. I just don't know why you would like, anybody would think this is a good idea. Like, I get ratings, I understand, but like if you're Murray, I'd be like, think about it just a little bit. But he goes out there and they're kind of doing the back and forth, and he finally confesses about killing those guys, and it's just he's like, yeah, I killed him. He's like, yep. And like,
yeah,
clearly the crowd is not the crowd who's going to be like, yeah, good job. They're all kind of like, oh my goodness, like how horrible, which most people probably would say that. But that whole sequence, man, is so good. I don't know, it's so freaky. It's so cool.
It really is.
Do you have a favorite moment?
I mean, that scene right there is without a doubt my favorite scene. That's probably one of my all-time favorite scenes of any movie.
Ah, cool.
But just like the fact that everything, the build up to that was just so good, and like it's almost like that was kind of like his last gamble, because right before that he had like just dodged those two detectives on the subway and like raised hell to get there. So it was kind of like, this is it for him. Like, this is the end of the road. So he, in knowing that, like, I'm gonna go on to this show, knowing that like I'm not just going to leave the show. Like, if I come out of here, I'm either going to be arrested or killed. Like, that's pretty much it. So it's kind of like it's his Super Bowl in a way, and him like coming out with the fight song, him with the curtains opening up, and him like doing his elaborate dance. And like, I don't know if you remember, like the two workers are standing there like looking at him sideways, like
yeah,
as he's
I love it,
doing these like theatrical dances, and he's just in his own mind, because in his mind, this is it. Like, I have nothing else after this, so I'm gonna spend the last few moments just going out with a bang. But yeah, that whole scene of him, like, especially when every time he addresses Frank, it's just like he keeps calling him, instead of just Murray, it's Murray. Like,
it's weird, right? It's like
I don't know. I think it was almost like he knew that Murray was sitting there kind of like backhand insulting him, so that was almost like his way of like, I'm going to also backhand insult you.
Yeah.
But it just comes off as kind of weird. But I've seen another YouTube video, and I don't remember who made it, but they compared that scene to Heath Ledger's Joker, where he is being what's it called? Where he sits down with the Batman in the I don't remember the name of, I can't,
like the interrogation room.
Interrogation, yeah. Like in that interrogation room scene, and how that's like those two scenes almost identically match up together, and like the way the guy breaks it down is actually really accurate.
Oh, cool.
But it's he described it as the point of both of them. It's when the audience realizes that the Joker has complete control. Like, at that point, they both mention, I have nothing else to live for. Like, you can't hurt me anymore, because at this point I have nothing else to live for. And it's almost just this really eerie comparison how both of them have that moment. And it's true. Like, at that point, the viewer knows, like, all bets are off. We have no idea what this dude can do, because both of them are backed into a corner, but at the same time, you're kind of scared to see what they're going to do next. So that scene entirely is like one of my favorite scenes of all time.
Oh yeah, and I neglected to mention it, but I'm glad you brought it up too. He is going down the stairs. The two, like, it's funny because you see like the two like people at the top of the stairs, and he's dancing, and you're like, oh, there'd be people walking around, but it's the two detectives, and they're like, hey, and he's like, oh, I gotta get out of here, and then, like, he just takes off. And that whole sequence of him like running through the subway, and he gets like, he inadvertently gets a guy killed because one of the detectives is getting like jumped, because there's all these people going to this rally, which that Randall guy mentions earlier on. He's like, oh, you going to the rally? And I love Arthur's like, no, like, he's just like has the full clown makeup on. He's just like completely oblivious to the rest of the world. He's just like, even if Joker was like an established criminal, that would be something that he would probably do. They'd be holding this huge rally, and he'd be like, they're doing a rally for me? He'd be like, yeah, I didn't hear about it. And like kind of getting through the subway, and he barely gets through there, but he like he takes that one dude's mask off, and the guy gets angry at him, and he kind of shoves him, and it like runs into another guy. The guy turns around and just punches that dude, and Arthur like puts it on. He's like, whoop, like, he's just like, I'm not part of this anymore. Right. Which is like, it's creepy, but like that whole sequence where he just gets so lucky, and then he kind of dances when one of the because the cops getting beat up, and he's like, like, you can't catch me. But that whole sequence, like going into it, and he wants to be introduced as Joker, and it's great because he's like, yeah, you called me a Joker, and I remember thinking, I was like, did he? And then also like Murray's like, did I call you that? And he's like, yeah, it doesn't matter, sure, I'll call you Joker, whatever, like it's gonna be good. But I love that whole like sequence because it really does show him off to many people. Like he's like, I'm the guy who did it. Here's kind of how I feel about the world. Everybody's kind of mean to each other. People aren't civil anymore. Even you, Murray, this shows like this, like in a way from the beginning of this was his dream to come on this show. Now he's there. He's like, you've spent, the last, like the other, a week ago, you're making fun of me. Tonight, you're making fun of me. He's like, I'm just a joke to you. Like, is this, and like Thomas Wayne thinks everybody's a clown. Like, like, it's just like, this is what the upper crust thinks of us. And what he's like, and I'm going to tell one more joke here. And he's like, what happens when and he even says it himself. He says, like, when a mentally challenged, like, loner gets kind of trashed on by the system. And he's like, you get what you effing deserve. And he just pulls out the gun and shoots Murray. And you're like, oh my gosh. Like, and this is right after, like, he's sitting next to that doctor and, like, Murray's right hand or whatever, who are just sitting there, just kind of, like, holding each other on the couch. This woman that he kissed when he walked out on stage. So, like, and he's just kind of sitting there, and he kind of, like, looks at the gun afterwards, and he's kind of, like, because he gets up and he shoots him again, and then he's like, ugh. He kind of, like, throws it on the desk, and he just kind of, like, walks up to the camera, like, man, it's just so good. It's so well done.
Is.
Like, you're like, okay, I get why he's not going to walk out of there. And the next time you see him, he's like in the cop car, which I feel like every Joker needs to just be like in a cop car at one point. Like, but
let me ask you, do you think that because I don't think that he had planned to shoot Murray up until like that very second, because beforehand he was like seemingly intending to off himself on the show.
Oh yeah, because that was like the plan. Yeah, you're right.
That was like his gag. Like, oh, you think my other joke was funny? Like, okay, well, I'm gonna just blow my own head off on the show as the punchline. But I feel like once he was on the show and going back and forth with Murray, it was almost like it just made him angry.
Yeah,
and it was almost like, I'm not gonna off myself. I'm offing you. Like you've really pissed me off at this point. And it was kind of like a split second change of plans. And he just started screaming at him, like, what happens when you cross like a mentally ill person, and goes on that quick rant, which I loved that, by the way.
That's
but
so good.
And then just split second breaking out the gun and just popping him right there. It was just like, man, like just crazy. And then like when he does come up to the broadcast camera and he's like, and just remember, and then it cuts him off right there.
Oh yeah, he says like is Murray's catchphrase, he's like, that's life. And then they start playing Spanish Flea, and they start backing up, and they like look at all these monitors that someone is probably looking at or left to be really quickly because they're like freaking out. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I forgot about that because he does kind of practice that. Like because he even says like in his little journal, like it's like, I hope my death makes more sense than my life, and that's kind of like his mentality. Yeah. But again, like harkening back to the subway, he had that moment where he could have, and then he's like, no, I'm angry. My anger is going to supersede. Yeah. Like this moment, and I'm just gonna do that, which I'm kind of surprised he didn't start like shooting into the crowd wildly or something, but he just kind of has that moment and he's just kind of like, all right. And then gets taken out, which again, reading the screenplay is a bit different, because he ends up getting out of the cop car himself, but in the movie, like it gets hit by an ambulance, and then like a taxi kind of skids over the top of it and stuff. It's like the biggest like action moment in the movie, besides him getting hit by a taxi earlier when he's running away from those detectives, and he rolls it off like a champ. Like he gets hit by it and he's just like, nope, I'm gonna keep going. And like those two people find him wearing the Joker mask, and they kind of bring him out, and then he kind of he rises, as it were, to prominence kind of in his element with all these people around him, and he's doing his dance. He's got the blood smile that he kind of puts on. Man, what a like powerful weird sequence
it's
to
so
have
good.
There at
it's
the end,
so
right?
Good.
Like intertwined with the Bruce Wayne origin story stuff, which I feel like we've seen it so many times. It makes sense here, but it also feels like they were probably like, if you're gonna make a Joker movie, you got to do some Batman stuff, like
right? Yeah.
I don't. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I thought it was a good fit for it. I feel like they were kind of like where can we kind of jab in one more, make this a superhero movie, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, what more of a perfect opportunity when the city is in complete chaos. And that's when Bruce Wayne's parents probably would have been killed. It was like, let's stick it in there. Um, but yeah, that scene was just so good. I could have sat there for another 3 hours just to see, all right, what happens next. Like,
Yeah.
to this day, I have no idea if they have any intentions on following this up with a next movie or whatever. But I really hope they do, because to me, that's like the most, besides this, like the actual origin, but like what would happen? What would be step 2 in the Joker's career? Like, I would love to see where they go right after that point. Um, but yeah, like that whole scene was just really, really well done.
Yeah, well, and you make a good point, because this film, I think it did pull in over $1 billion, which is
Wow.
hard for like a movie studio, like especially probably on a smaller budget. I would imagine this is not going to have as much as something like a Justice League
Mm,
or an MCU film usually does, but uh, it's obviously so crafted to be its own thing. But at the same time, if you're in the business of making films and stuff, there's part of you that's like, wow, we have an established franchise. I'm sure a lot of people did go see this because of the name and the interest in it. And
mhm.
many people were like, oh, this was not anything like I expected. I think it was still super well received, but I'm sure there were some people out there who were like, this wasn't like the Joker, like leading into like regular Batman stuff. Because like if they continued with this Joker would probably fit a little better into something like Batman Begins, or something that's a little more
Mm,
grounded. You know what I mean? Like it seems that way to me anyway. But yeah,
yeah.
I too would love to see where it goes, because yeah, at the end there you get he's back. He's back in it, as it were, but he's in a new situation in Arkham, in these white walled rooms, which is the same place. In the screenplay it says this too. It's the same place that 30 years prior, he thinks anyway, that his mom was being interrogated at Arkham, and he's like in that flashback sequence, which I always love when they do that, when there's like a flashback and like a present day person has like inserted themselves into it. I always think that's so cool. But he kind of is there, and he starts singing "That's Life," and then you see him start walking down the hallway without his healthcare provider or whatever, and there's just like bloody footprints, and you're like, oh my god, did he just like stomp someone to death? And like he's like
Right.
trying to run away from the orderly at the end, so it's kind of like, haha, like it's the end, yay. Like it's just intense, man. It doesn't leave you feeling like like most superhero films nowadays do, where they're like,
Mm,
the good guys won, and the bad guys lost. It was like kind of Infinity War-esque for me in that way, where I was like, oh my, like, oh
yeah.
no, like, but even more so because it was obviously talking about more about society and stuff. But yeah, I agree with you. I would totally love to see where this goes next. And I did look this up. Apparently, Joaquin Phoenix lost like over 50 pounds for this role. We didn't talk about that too much. When you see him like shirtless, and he's like, and like you can tell he's not eating a lot, but he's kind of
Mhm.
strong too. Like it's so creepy. Like I don't know how you feel about it when he's like laying back on the couch. You like see all of his ribs and like a concave stomach. You're like, ugh.
Yeah. It's weird because at the first time seeing it, I really didn't think anything of it. But like now that you mention it, it's like, yeah, I guess that would like a very grown man, like almost middle-aged man would
Yeah.
be that like malnourished. And it's just strange. But seeing it the first time, it made so much sense that I didn't really think about it. It was almost like seeing where he lived and just the conditions and all that. I was like, it wasn't even a second thought. I was like, yeah, that's probably what he would have looked like. Like it just wasn't a thought to me.
Yeah. So overall, I think I've talked about it before, but like Jalen, like full thoughts, like feelings towards this now that you've seen it twice. Like, where does it rank for you? Does it rank pretty high still, or like where are you feeling?
Yeah, it
Ow.
definitely ranks really high. I have a hard time saying it's like my favorite superhero movie because I don't quite consider it to be a superhero movie. To me, it's like if you were to just remove or just change Bruce Wayne's name to whatever, it could be completely different from Joker.
Yep.
Uh, so to me, it's not a knock on the movie. It's just it is what it is. Um, it is without a doubt like one of my favorite movies out there. Um, but yeah, like just the whole thing of like the fact that it takes place in like the early 80s, late 70s, but the message of it could still is super relevant today. And like, yeah, there were a lot of people that saw it and were like kind of disappointed. Like I think my mom even saw it and she was like, "Oh, like that wasn't what I thought it was going to be." Like she was kind of thinking it was, it was going to be like a superhero movie, and she was like super disappointed with it. I was like, "What? Like, how could you possibly do this movie?" Um, but yeah, it's just kind of like it's this double-edged sword where it's like it's totally not your average superhero movie at all, but at the same time, it's like, wouldn't that be what the Joker's origin story should be? Like, should be a very backwards, like realistic, just grimy portrayal of somebody's life.
Yeah.
That is the Joker. Like, that's kind of that is his origin. Like, you're not seeing him at his full force, 20 years down the line when he's fighting Batman. Like, that's just where he comes from. Um, but yeah, just the message I think it sends is really, really important, of just like when him saying like, for the first time I felt noticed, and it took him killing people to for him to feel noticed. And it's kind of like, damn, people, like
Yeah.
maybe we should just try being nicer to each other.
Yeah, totally.
It's like, do you think he would have been pushed to that point if he would have just felt, like when he was screaming at Bruce Wayne in the bathroom, like, how about a hug, dad? Like,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Sometimes it just feels like people could just be, way nicer to each other, and him feeling like his life was a tragedy. Like the whole kind of line in the movie was, "I thought my life was a tragedy, but turns out it's a comedy." And it's like that says a lot. Like that's what he was pushed to that point of like, my I'm going to change my outlook on my life and just raise hell at this point. And it's like, damn, we should just, moral of the story is just be nice to people.
Oh yeah, totally. I think that scene with his dad too. I think, or well, I should say his dad, but he thinks it's his dad, Thomas Wayne. That might have played. Or Bruce, yeah. Oh, so yeah, Mr. Wayne. We'll just call him that, Mr. Wayne. That probably would have played better in my mind if it hadn't come right after the fact that he like just killed 3 dudes. Where he's like, "It'd be nice if you just warmed to me, Dad." It's like, I wonder if there was part of him that if maybe he had the gun on him then too. Like, you know what I mean? Like he could have brought that. I wonder if they considered. They're like, what if Joker killed Thomas Wayne? And killed, because there's been versions where like the Joker in like I think it's Batman '89, where like Joe Chill or like Jack Nicholson is like the guy who killed Bruce Wayne's parents. I could be completely wrong on that. But I wonder if that was a consideration at any point. But yeah, I totally hear you, because it's funny because like I think you could take it either way. Where you're like, man, I feel so bad for this guy, but then you're also like, he's also really scary, and like the system it's like the system is corrupted, and he is a product of it. And the product of like a bad upbringing, the product of just like the world being mean to him just for his profession, and stuff like that. It's just like you feel really bad for him, but then you're also like, well, he's also kind of a bad dude. So it's hard, like he's not flawless, which I think is good in a protagonist. Like there's got to be things in him, and obviously his flaws are much bigger than most others because he's normally a villain. And I think a sequel is something they want to do. I don't know if they're going to. Is that the one you do like the vat of acid and like he's white, he's like the white paint is on him forever kind of thing? I don't know if that's too much. You know what I mean? Like you can't, it's like, because they obviously have it so grounded right now. I don't know. Like I think that's the fear, is like, they're like, oh, it's going to get tied into Batman stuff, and then it's just going to take off, and it's going to be less of what it used to be. I'm not sure.
Right. Because at that point you would have to, like, you'd have to pick a street on, okay, we're going to go this way with it, or we're going to keep it on the ground. So that would be just really weird. But yeah, just what a great movie all around. Like the writing, the cinematics, the score, Joaquin Phoenix's role was outstanding. Like just all around, what a great movie.
Yeah, and actually we got a few questions here about this, Jalen, because I like to bring this up. Community feedback and questions time. This one comes in from Mecha Rekka over on our Discord. If you guys want to ever get a hold of us, just tweet me, #CriticalPodcast. We'll get to it later. He says, "Hi, Jimmy. I haven't seen the Joker movie, but I'm curious as to your opinion on which Joker is the most iconic or quote-unquote best representation of the character." Jalen, you want to go first in this one? Most iconic or best? Maybe you could do iconic and then favorite if they don't coincide.
For the longest time, I would say it was Jack Nicholson. I would like to say though, in the past like decade or so, I feel like Heath Ledger has taken that spot. Like, um, I do think that that was the best Joker, with Joaquin Phoenix being in a strong second, like a almost like a 1A. Um, but yeah, I feel like Jack Nicholson was the most iconic for a long time. But over the past, since The Dark Knight came out, I think he did the best job, and then slowly that started to become like, when you think of Joker now, I feel like most people usually refer to the Heath Ledger Joker.
Sure. I guess for me, like I know a lot of people would say Heath, like you said, with his performance, it's so good, but it feels so different. It almost feels like the Joker exists in that universe, and he's like the even more deranged like version of the Joker, or is like as aspires to be like that. Like because there's some stuff he does a few things in there that are Joker esque, but his performance is so much more unhinged. And the one that I always come back to, it's going to be weird, but I think it's Mark Hamill, especially like in the Arkham games, like that Joker, the voice and like the style of just this kind of like he is menacing, but he's also kind of funny. And there's always this kind of like back and forth where like he is a threat, but he's not really a threat. People are afraid of him, but also Batman's like, oh god, it's just you again, like kind of situation. And I don't know, there's something in that performance that, especially when I figured that out when I was younger, and I was like, the guy who played Luke Skywalker is the Joker. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And then I like saw like the voiceover work that he'd done, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like watching that voice come out of his mouth. I was like, are you serious? Like, so to me, and I know a lot of people like the animated series. I think the animated series is good. I like Batman Beyond because I grew up with it, but especially the Arkham games. Man, that to me is so iconic and great. But all the Jokers I think are really good. I can't really think of one that's like too bad. Like Alan Tudyk does a really good one for Harley Quinn, and it's like completely different than these other ones. So like, I don't know. It's kind of whatever you like. And I think our generation grew up with Heath Ledger as the Joker, along with Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne. And a lot of people might be like, Keaton is the best Bruce Wayne, but like for me, I'm like, no man, like it's Bale for sure, dude. Like he's so freaking good. I look at him like that looks like a Bruce. Like when he's got the no mask, I'm like he looks like a Bruce. But yeah, Heath Ledger's performance obviously is transformative, and I don't know, it's hard, man. I like for me, I feel like it should be Hamill, but like there's Heath Ledger's good too. But Joaquin Phoenix, man, I don't know. For me, live action might take the cake because I know more about him. But I think that's what's cool about Heath Ledger's is that you don't know about him. Like he's just this kind of he's an entity that he's just kind of out there. I don't know.
I feel like if you took Joaquin Phoenix's Joker and then like fast forward him, I don't know, 10, 15 years into the crime game, I feel like you would get Heath Ledger's. Like at that point,
maybe
he's just always unhinged and
sure.
almost like mastered it in a way. Like I feel like that would be the result of 15, 20 years of that lifestyle would do that to him to that point.
Yeah,
but
and he would also like if you went to Harvey Dent and he saw him in the hospital, he would be the guy who like gives him a gun and he's like oh yeah, come on, shoot, come on, dude, let's do it. Even though during that whole thing he's like those guys, they're schemers. I'm like, dude, you're a schemer. You watch that movie, he's planned all this stuff out. He's definitely a schemer. I'm like, Joker, you're an agent of chaos, but you've caught a few cars in your time, my friend. You don't burn money like that, a mountain of money, and be like, we don't need it, because there's probably part of you who's like, I got some money stored away, Oh man, it's too bad we never saw that continuation in Dark Knight Rises. It's a shame, even though I think Tom Hardy still does a decent job. Like, what are you gonna do?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what are you gonna do? But anyway, all the Jokers I think are really good. So whatever, if you're listening to this and you're like, why didn't you say Jared Leto? If that's your favorite Joker, good on you. You know what I mean? He's coming back in Justice League, even though he was never in it in the first place. I'm so fascinated to watch that whole thing. I'm so interested. It's going to be like the most expensive movie of all time. Like, oh my gosh. It's just fascinating. I love it. I love movies. We got another question in here. This one comes in from Missile Mage. This is going to be a little bit different, but it still plays within it. He asks, if you could put J. Jonah Jameson into any other franchise, movie, game, TV, what would you choose? He said he thought of this while he was watching a Bugstack stream. Thank you, Bugsnacks, kind of bug, kind of snack. If you could take J. Jonah Jameson and have him just screaming over the airwaves in another movie or a game or TV show.
Remind me on who that is again.
That's Spider-Man, like the guy who runs the Daily Bugle.
Oh, okay.
He's always like, Spider-Man!
Right, yeah, okay. And then put him into another game or movie. You go first on this one.
Okay. So the cop-out answer is like the Arkham games, because they already did that with like Spider-Man, where he's just like always over the airwaves. And I would love to have him just screaming about Batman all the time. He'd be like, he's a man dressed as a bat. Like, like it'd be that for like 60 hours. I think it'd be pretty good. I was trying to think of like a good on-running TV show where he could just like be in the background and you're like, oh God, he's there. Like he's just always showing up. Like he's just on this like his own little podcast all the time. Like he was in, was it Home or Far From Home? Did you see Far From Home, Jalen?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because he's at the very end there. His hair, though, I'm sorry, spoiler alert, the hair wasn't right. I'm just saying, Marvel, if we're gonna bring him back, you gotta do the little flat top. Like he's gotta be the full Jameson, right? Full Jameson. Yeah, I don't know, man. There's something about putting him in Batman that I feel like it would work really well. And I almost feel like you don't have to change the character. Like, or Superman. Like, have the Daily Bugle fight with the Daily Planet, and the Daily Planet's always like, oh, Superman saved a cat from a tree, and then, like, then it's the Daily Bugle. It's just like, he's a menace! Like, just every newspaper is just down to Superman, he's the worst, and, like, Lex Luthor backs them or something. I feel like that, it could work real well, and it's just, you slot it right in. You know what I'm saying? You're welcome, guys.
That's a pretty good pick. I think it'd be pretty entertaining if you just slapped him into Jurassic Park.
Oh my gosh.
The very first one, if he was just like worked on the park and he's like in the offices with the rest of them and like stuff is going crazy awry out on the island and he's just like, the gate went down and like, this dinosaur got out and it's like, what are you idiots doing out there? And it's just like he would inevitably end up getting eaten.
Yeah.
But it would be highly entertaining for most of the movie.
I feel like you read my mind, man, because I was thinking Jurassic Park. I was like, how am I going to get him in there? I agree, man, totally. Like, he'd be like, what are you, some sort of bipedal, like, lizard? I don't even know what I'm looking at. Like, like he'd be just yelling at the raptor before it's about to eat him. Or he would be like one of the guys in, like, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom when they're doing, like, news reports, and he's like, dinosaurs on an island, I say let him die. Like, he'd just be screaming all the time. Like, they'd be like, have you ever research dinosaurs? He'd be like, I don't have to, just look at them. Like, that's the type of guy Jameson is. Jalen, that's way better than mine. Yours is and my problem is that he's already in Justice League. He plays Gordon, so like I don't know if he dual role.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which he would make such a great Gordon too. Like, J.K. Simmons is so dang good. Which I think, we didn't even say that. It doesn't have to be J.K. Simmons, but I feel like it has to be J.K. Simmons at this point. Like, he's just perfect. Dude, fit
that so well.
Oh, totally. Dude, Jurassic Park, inspired choice, man. Look at you. So good. Like, he could be in all those movies. He'd just be on some news reports and he got away from the island, but he like lost an arm or something. And he'd be like, this is what the dinosaurs did to me. This is what they're going to do to you. Like, like stuff like that. Or he'd be like pouring ketchup on himself in between like takes, and he'd be like, oh my God, look, they got into the studio. Yeah. Oh gosh. Dude, that's a great question, Mr. Mage. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, Mr. Mage.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate those questions. And if you guys ever have a question for the show or a topic or an idea like this, or a guest idea like Galactic Grizzly being back on the show because he's fantastic, all you have to do is tweet the hashtag Critical Podcast, and you can tweet at us officially on Twitter, which is @GoCritical, or I'm at JimmyGood013. We also have a Gmail account. Just Go Critical Reviews at Gmail if you want to send in stuff there, or I don't know, just any way you want to send stuff. Discord works as well. However, I know you're not on their Twitter as much, Jalen, but like if people did want to contact you over there, where would they find you?
Ooh, my Twitter, I think is either my last name, first name, or first name, last name.
I think I looked it up and it was crap. Now I don't know it. I'm gonna look it up. This is professional. We're so good at this.
It's either Brown or Jalen Brown.
I'm looking it up.
I feel like it's Brown Jalen.
It's Jalen Brown.
Oh, okay. There we go.
It's the best of both worlds, my friend.
That just goes to show, my involvement on Twitter. But yeah, I'm not really on Twitter really at all right now. Really the only like social media like interaction I have now, besides YouTube, if you count that, I have another sports podcast, which for those who are into sports, it's called AFR Sports or After Further Review Sports. So that the Instagram for that is just at AFR Sports. So if you want to keep up with that, there's that. But for the very few of you that are into all the nerd stuff and the sports stuff, there you go.
There's some. Is that a YouTube channel too?
Yeah, it's on the YouTube channel is called Mel Himes Media, and Himes is Hymes.
Okay.
But yeah, it hosts a slew of different podcasts. But yeah, we record our sports podcast every Wednesday night at 9:00 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, if you want to check that out, that's where that is at.
I will link all that stuff. I'll probably get it from you, Jalen. After this, I'll be like, what was all that stuff you said? But it'll be down in our YouTube's description. But if you guys want, if you're like listening to this, just let me know. And then I can also get that to you other ways as well. Because I think there are a few people who actually do just listen to the show now. Because Jalen, I've been doing this for years. For some odd reason, I never thought to myself, let's just do an audio version and we'll just put that out on podcast stuff. Why would you do that? That makes too much sense. But I'm finally getting around to it. Old dog learning new tricks and all that. But yeah, if anybody is listening to this and they want to support us, the greatest way to do so is just to share us around. That is the best thing you can do. We also have a Patreon, and if you want to support there after listening for a long time, if you really enjoy this, that's a great place to support us. And if you're at $5 and up, you get your name here at the end. If you're just listening to this, you won't see anything because you're listening to this. So I don't know what I could do for the audio listeners, but just get real close and do like an ASMR type of thing. Is this weird? Probably weird. That's be strange. Anyway, Jalen, thank you for being on, man. It's just a pleasure to talk to you. I loved working with you in the past and just chatting. And when I was like, you should be on the show, and you're like, we should talk about Joker. Like the first thing I thought was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to watch that stressful film again. I'm going back in, but I'm glad I did. And it was not nearly as long the second time. The first time I watched it, it felt like it was 4 hours. I was like, oh my God. Like in the movie theater, I was like one of 4 people in the movie theater. And like, it was like a weekday in the afternoon. I was like,
that was a long theater watch for sure.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's just like oppressive, and you're like, it's 2 hours and 2 minutes. Like it's not like a super long, it's not like a 2.5 or 3 hour movie, but like it's just like, okay. So if any of you haven't watched it yet, I would recommend setting aside a night, watch it maybe with a loved one. But again, not for the kids. It's very R rated. Like we said, it's not R all the time, but the moments that it is very much so. So also like they have swearing in it, but it's not constant. Like some movies, like when they get that R rating, it's just constantly like driving that home. But
yeah, that's true.
Not so much in this one. But Jalen, again, thank you so much for being on, man. It's such a pleasure.
Absolutely, anytime. Thank you for having me on for a second time. I'm glad to come back for a third, or fourth, or fifth, as many times as possible. This is the best podcast on the planet.
Oh, wow.
Like Jimmy said. Spread the word, share it with your coworkers, share it with your coworkers' family, your friends, their friends, your dog, whoever you have around you. Go ahead and share the show. It's pretty easy. You all have a phone. You just go to YouTube, pull it up, and just be like, hey, if you want to watch something tonight, it's Critical Reviews. Check it out. And there's plenty of content. There's an array of content. And it's something for everybody. So feel free to introduce the show to anybody in your life.
Oh my gosh, Jalen, that's the best play I've ever gotten. I've been trying to do this for so long and trying to like make it good, but can I just sound bite that and I'll just be like, and a word from Jalen this week at the very end of the show, just you right there at the end. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, channel's been a hodgepodge. But I have been trying to figure this whole like it's like critical podcast on Spotify, and I'm like, they can't review on Spotify yet. I don't understand. I just hope people are enjoying it somewhere out there in the world. But yeah, dude, I was gonna say at least a hat trick. You're gonna be on at least one more time, if not many more times. We'll have other things to talk about. Maybe I'm curious to think what it'll be. Oh man, maybe Batman stuff. I don't know. We don't have to. I don't want to shoehorn you into just Batman or pigeonhole you into Batman stuff because this wasn't really Batman. But we'll think of something else to have you on for because yeah, you're just a cool guy. I like having you on the show. So again, everybody, please Yeah, go check out all Jalen's stuff too, because we've worked together before. I can vouch for the guy. All right, I know a guy who knows a guy. It's Jalen. He knows me. See how that works? Just all round robin. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time, just remember to adapt and overcome. Bye.